The forged travel papers were perfect. Too perfect. SS-Hauptsturmführer Klaus Weber held them under the lamplight in the Gestapo interrogation room at Dulag Luft, the Luftwaffe's transit camp near Frankfurt. American identification, Wehrmacht transfer orders. Even the coffee stains looked authentic. What Weber didn't see, what he couldn't see, was that every document had been created by men the Third Reich classified as subhuman. Second Lieutenant James Mitchell, 332nd Fighter Group, sat across the table. Shot down 3 weeks ago over Austria, black, American, pilot. Weber had interrogated 47 Allied airmen that month. He knew the patterns, the breaking points, the tells. Weber's interrogation report, dated May 16, 1945, captured in American files after Germany's surrender, documented his confusion. Subject presented travel documents of exceptional quality, Gothic script perfect, authorization codes authentic, Gestapo stamp from Berlin headquarters, genuine in appearance, subject claims standard transfer procedure. Documents suggest either legitimate Wehrmacht orders or forgery operation of unprecedented sophistication. Given subject's race and documented intellectual limitations per Directive 48C, forgery deemed unlikely, recommend verification with Berlin headquarters. Berlin never responded. The Reich had 6 days left. Mitchell's after-action report, filed with US Army intelligence on May 30, 1945, noted, Gestapo interrogator examined forged documents for approximately 30 minutes, never questioned authenticity. His assumptions about Negro intelligence prevented him from considering forgery as possibility. It was May 15, 1945. In 7 days, Germany would surrender, and Weber was about to discover that 12 black American POWs had already escaped from Stalag Luft III using documents he was holding in his hands. This is the story of how Nazi racial ideology became the blueprint for its own defeat. How 12 men the Reich said were intellectually inferior created the most sophisticated escape operation in POW history, and how the Gestapo's own assumptions blinded them to an escape happening under their watch. Subscribe to see more untold stories like this. Most people don't know this history exists.
When Second Lieutenant James Mitchell was shot down over Austria on March 18, 1945, Gestapo files already contained detailed intelligence about him, not because he was important, because he was black. Sonderbehandlung Directive 48C, issued by SS Obergruppenführer Ernst Kaltenbrunner on February 12, 1945, was explicit. Negro prisoners of war from American air forces represent unique intelligence opportunities. Their documented intellectual limitations make them susceptible to interrogation techniques ineffective against white prisoners. Negro POWs should be separated from white prisoners and subjected to enhanced questioning to exploit their psychological vulnerabilities. The directive was based on 7 years of Reich racial science, studies from the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, research by Dr. Eugen Fischer proving Negro cranial capacity indicated limited abstract reasoning, papers by Dr. Ottmar Freiherr von Verschuer documenting Negro susceptibility to suggestion, Nazi interrogation doctrine classified prisoners by race, white Americans, resistant to standard interrogation, required psychological manipulation, white British, even more resistant, obstinate, required isolation techniques, Negroes, limited education, poor abstract thinking, vulnerable to authority figures, expected to break within 48 hours of enhanced interrogation. The Gestapo believed this completely.
which is why they never considered that Negro pilots might be using their own racism as camouflage. Mitchell arrived at Dulag Luft on March 19, 1945. The Luftwaffe transit camp processed every Allied airman shot down over Germany before transfer to permanent POW camps. Standard procedure, medical check, delousing, interrogation, then rail transport to Stalag Luft III or 7A. But Mitchell's interrogation was different. SS-Hauptsturmführer Weber had read Directive 48C. He'd attended lectures at the Reich main security office about Negro psychology. He knew the protocols: isolation, no food for 24 hours, then questioning in a warm room with coffee and cigarettes. The Negro prisoner would be grateful, compliant, would provide tactical intelligence without realizing it. Weber tried standard techniques. Mitchell's POW interrogation file,
declassified in 1985, shows Weber's escalating frustration. Day 1 report: subject provides only name, rank, service number, despite isolation protocols. Day 2 report: subject unresponsive to food deprivation and environmental manipulation. Behavior inconsistent with Directive 48C predictions for Negro subjects. After 36 hours, Weber filed an unusual request. His memo to Gestapo headquarters, dated March 21, 1945, stated, "Negro subject demonstrates unexpected resistance to interrogation protocols, behavior more consistent with experienced white officer than vulnerable inferior prisoner. Request guidance on alternate approaches or recommend transfer for continued observation." The Gestapo approved transfer. Weber's final notation in Mitchell's file: subject transferred to Stalag Luft III, interrogation inconclusive. Subject's resistance to standard Negro-specific protocols suggests either exceptional individual or flawed directive assumptions. Recommend policy review. What Weber didn't know, Mitchell had just completed the first phase of the plan. Stalag Luft III, Sagan, Poland, March 23, 1945. The camp held 10,000 Allied POWs, British, American, Canadian, French, Norwegian, all officers, all aircrew, all dedicated to one thing: escape. The camp was famous for it. The Great Escape in March 1944 had sent 76 men through a tunnel. 50 were executed after recapture. But the attempt had proven something. With enough ingenuity, escape was possible. When Mitchell arrived, 11 other black American pilots were already there. Captain Robert Johnson, 99th Fighter Squadron, shot down December 1944. First Lieutenant Thomas Daniels, 100th Fighter Squadron, shot down January 1945. Second Lieutenant Charles Brooks, 301st Fighter Squadron, shot down February 1945. 9 others, all Tuskegee Airmen, all classified by the Gestapo as intellectually inferior, all working on an escape plan the Germans couldn't conceive of. Johnson's memoir, published in 1978 under the title Invisible Escape, described the formation of what the group called the Invisible Detachment. "We met in the corner of Barracks 14. British officers created distractions during German inspections. We had approximately 45 minutes each evening when we could plan without surveillance. The British understood what we were attempting. They'd lost 50 men after the Great Escape. They wanted us to succeed." Captain Johnson's planning documents, preserved in the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site archives, outlined the mission. Exploit German racial assumptions to access materials for document forgery. Create transfer papers indistinguishable from authentic Wehrmacht orders. Execute escape through front gate using enemy ideology as operational camouflage. The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1. Establish credibility by being exactly what the Germans expected: compliant, simple, non-threatening. Phase 2. Use that credibility to access materials for forged documents. Phase 3. Walk out the front gate using papers the Gestapo would never question because they came from Negro hands. It was brilliant, audacious, impossible. And it started with understanding exactly how the Germans thought. The invisible work Captain Johnson had been an art teacher in Detroit before the war. He understood forgery, document construction, the subtle details that made papers believable. Lieutenant Daniels had studied chemistry at Howard University. He understood inks, papers, the chemical composition of German military documents. Lieutenant Brooks had worked for the Detroit Free Press. He understood German, could read Gothic script, could replicate the bureaucratic language of Wehrmacht transfer orders. Together they had everything needed to forge documents, except materials. Johnson's memoir described the strategy. The Luftwaffe needed workers for administrative tasks, filing, cleaning, simple labor. I volunteered along with 3 others. The Germans approved immediately.
Their assumptions about Negro capabilities made us invisible. Stalag Luft III administrative records, captured by Soviet forces and later released to American archives, show Johnson and 3 other black POWs assigned to Kommandantur cleaning detail on February 12, 1945. The assignment lasted 3 weeks. German supervision reports noted, Negro prisoners performed duties satisfactorily, no security concerns, simple tasks completed without incident. Johnson's memoir continued, while I cleaned, I studied the filing system, the transfer order forms, the signatures, the stamps, the paper stock, the ink colours, every detail of Wehrmacht prisoner processing. I was invisible to them. They discussed classified matters in front of me because they assumed I couldn't comprehend German bureaucracy.
Their assumption was my advantage. On February 28, 1945, Johnson took 12 blank transfer forms from the trash bin, forms with minor errors the German clerk had discarded. His memoir noted, they never counted trash. Why would they? What could Negro prisoners do with discarded paperwork? Lieutenant Brooks' after-action report filed May 1945 described his assignment to the camp print shop. Volunteered for print shop detail March 1, 1945. German guards supervised but assumed Negro prisoners incapable of sophisticated theft. Over 2 weeks, acquired 1 bottle official ink, 2 stamp pads, carbon paper, and blotting sheets. Germans never inventoried materials closely because they assumed we lacked capacity for document forgery. By March 15, 1945, the Invisible Detachment possessed everything needed.
Johnson's memoir noted, we had stolen forms, authentic ink, and complete understanding of Wehrmacht document formatting. The Germans had given us everything, while assuming we understood nothing. Now came the hard part. Post-war document analysis by U.S. Army intelligence, completed July 1945, examined the forged papers. The analysis report concluded, documents demonstrate exceptional technical proficiency, Gothic script hand-drawn with professional precision, Wehrmacht formatting accurate down to spacing and punctuation, authorization codes correctly reference actual military directives, signatures replicate Oberst Werner Luft's documented style, Gestapo stamps chemically identical to authentic examples. Overall assessment, indistinguishable from legitimate Wehrmacht transfer orders without chemical testing. Johnson's memoir described the creation process. I worked 3 nights studying stolen transfer forms, every flourish of Gothic script, every bureaucratic phrase, the ornate signature, the official seals. I drew by lamplight while others created noise near the door.
Lieutenant Daniels' 1982 interview with the Smithsonian described the aging process. Coffee stains for handling marks, dirt smudges from processing, creases from folding, every detail suggesting the papers had moved through Wehrmacht bureaucracy. The Germans believed their system was too complex for Negroes to understand. We proved understanding requires intelligence, not race. Lieutenant Brooks' contribution, documented in his 1975 memoir, Through the Gate, focused on the critical element, the Gestapo authorization from Berlin. That stamp meant highest level approval. Germans never questioned Gestapo documents. I added that stamp knowing it would prevent scrutiny. Their faith in their own bureaucracy became our escape route. By March 18th, the documents were complete, 12 sets, each containing transfer orders from Stalag Luft III to Arbeitskommando 47, travel authorization from Gestapo Berlin, individual identification cards, and food ration coupons. US Army intelligence analysis noted, the forgers understood something the Germans didn't: bureaucracy as visual language. Master that language and people stop questioning. The documents succeeded not despite their complexity, but because of it. Germans couldn't conceive that Negro prisoners could master their bureaucratic systems. The escape Stalag Luft III guard log, April 3, 1945, documented the transaction. 14:30 hours, 12 American Negro prisoners presented transfer orders, documents examined by Unteroffizier Schmidt, authorization confirmed with Kommandantur, transfer approved, prisoners departed 1500 hours via Wehrmacht transport truck, destination Arbeitskommando 47, France. Unteroffizier Hans Schmidt's post-war testimony, given to American investigators in June 1945, described his decision. The papers appeared authentic, Gothic script correct, stamps genuine, Gestapo authorization from Berlin. I telephoned camp administration. They confirmed Negro prisoners being redistributed to labor details, standard procedure in April 1945 as Reich reorganized. I signed transfer log and approved departure. Schmidt's testimony continued, I never suspected forgery. Negro prisoners weren't capable of sophisticated document creation. That's what our training said. That's what every directive said. When I saw black prisoners with proper papers, I assumed the papers were legitimate. My assumptions prevented me from seeing what was actually happening. Captain Johnson's memoir described the moment. We stood at the gate with forged papers in hand. Everything depended on Nazi racial ideology. If the guard questioned the documents, we'd be shot. If his training about Negro inferiority was stronger than his security procedures, we'd walk free. We waited. The Wehrmacht truck arrived at 1500 hours. 12 men climbed aboard. Schmidt signed the transfer log. The truck drove through the gate. Lieutenant Brooks's memoir noted the simplicity. No tunnel, no violence, no chase, just 12 black men walking out the front door, using papers the Germans couldn't conceive we'd forged. Their ideology was our escape route. Wehrmacht transport records recovered from Görlitz station archives in 1947 show Obergefreiter Paul Müller delivered 12 American POWs to the railway depot on April 3, 1945. His log noted, prisoners transferred to railway officer for transport to France. Papers in order, no incidents. The railway officer's log, dated April 3, 1945, recorded, received 12 American Negro prisoners, transfer orders valid, directed to platform for Halle-Frankfurt France route. System chaos due to Reich collapse, processing 200+ transfers daily, Negro prisoners with proper papers, noted but not prioritized. Captain Johnson's memoir described the moment. The railway officer barely glanced at our papers. He was processing hundreds of transfers. Chaos everywhere. We stood on the platform. Then we walked away. Nobody stopped us. Nobody looked twice at confused soldiers in POW uniforms during the Reich's collapse. American intelligence debriefing reports filed May 1945 documented the three groups' movements. Captain Johnson's group reached US 69th Infantry Division near Leipzig, April 8, 1945. Report filed, 12 escaped POWs from Stalag Luft III, used forged documents to exit camp, evaded German patrols for 5 days, no casualties. Lieutenant Daniel's group reached US 80th Infantry Division near Erfurt, April 10, 1945. Report noted, 4 POWs presented a checkpoint with escape documentation, verified through POW records. Debriefing confirms sophisticated forgery operation. Lieutenant Brooks' group reached US 89th Infantry Division near Weimar, April 12, 1945. After action report stated, 4 additional escaped POWs from same operation confirmed. Total 12 successful escapes using forged Wehrmacht documents, 0 recaptures, 0 casualties, complete operational success. SS-Hauptsturmführer Weber was captured by US forces on April 15, 1945, near Frankfurt. His interrogation by Army Counterintelligence Corps occurred 5 days later. The interrogation report, declassified in 1985, documented Weber's reaction when informed that Lieutenant Mitchell's documents had been forgeries. According to the report, subject showed visible distress upon learning that papers he had authenticated were created by Negro prisoners. Subject stated his training under Directive 48C indicated Negro prisoners lacked capacity for sophisticated document creation. When confronted with samples of forged papers, subject examined them for approximately 2 minutes without speaking. Weber's statement, recorded in the report, "The quality is extraordinary, professional. The Gothic script is perfect, the signatures accurate. The authorization codes correctly reference actual Wehrmacht directives. I cannot distinguish these from authentic orders without chemical analysis." Our training said Negro prisoners were intellectually limited, unable to master abstract concepts. When I saw authentic appearing papers from Negro hands, I assumed they were legitimate because our ideology said forgery was impossible. The interrogation report noted, subject acknowledged that racial assumptions prevented detection of sophisticated forgery operation. Subject's faith in Directive 48C created security vulnerability exploited by prisoners. Subject expressed confusion when shown that Gestapo authorization stamp from Berlin, signed by Ernst Kaltenbrunner, was also forged. Weber's final recorded statement. Everything we believed about racial intelligence, the training, the directives, the research, all operationally worthless. 12 men classified as inferior executed, the only completely successful mass escape in camp history. Our ideology didn't just fail, it made us blind. Post-war analysis by US Army intelligence concluded, subject's reliance on Nazi racial theory prevented him from considering forgery despite numerous indicators. The sophisticated nature of forged documents contradicted every assumption in Directive 48C. Rather than question the directive, subject questioned the document's origin, but not their authenticity. Ideology overrode security protocols. The mathematics of the escape revealed how completely Nazi assumptions had failed. Stalag Luft III, security measures, 10,000 POWs under constant surveillance, 178 guards, electric fencing guard towers every 50 meters, dogs patrolling perimeter, regular barrack searches, informant network among prisoners.
Previous escape attempts: 1943, 1945. 47 tunneling attempts detected, 23 fence-cutting attempts stopped, 11 gate attempts with forged papers caught immediately. Total successful escapes: 0 after Great Escape, all recaptured. The Invisible Detachment escape: 12 men, 0 tunneling, 0 fence-cutting, walked out main gate in broad daylight, used forged documents created inside the camp, 0 recaptures, 100% success rate. The Gestapo had predicted Negro prisoners would be the easiest to manage. The actual rate: Negro prisoners executed the only completely successful mass escape in Stalag Luft III history. Not partially successful, completely. May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. US Army repatriation records show all 12 escaped POWs processed through debriefing centers in France. Medical exams completed. Intelligence reports filed. Each man received the Distinguished Flying Cross for their escape. Then transport home to America. Captain Robert Johnson's employment applications, preserved in Wayne State University archives, document his return to Detroit. 6 teaching applications filed between June and September 1945. All rejected, no reasons given. Johnson's diary, donated to the Smithsonian in 1995, included an entry dated August 12, 1945. Applied to Cass Technical High School today. Principal looked at my credentials, looked at me, said the position had been filled. I saw the job posting is still in the window. They don't say it's because I'm Negro, they don't have to. Johnson eventually found work as a janitor at the Detroit Public Library, taught art classes at night at the Negro YMCA. His 1978 memoir noted, "I forged documents that fooled the Gestapo. In Detroit, I couldn't get hired to teach high school art." Lieutenant Thomas Daniels' application records, archived at Howard University, show 23 laboratory and university positions applied for between May and December 1945. 0 offers. Daniels' letters to his brother, published in 2001 in Letters from a Tuskegee Airman, documented the pattern. Applied to George Washington University Chemistry Department. Credentials: degree from Howard, combat experience, POW survival, successful escape. Their response: position filled. I saw them hire a white applicant with less experience next week. Daniels spent 32 years at the US Post Office, sorting mail. His 1982 Smithsonian interview noted, "I mixed chemicals in a POW camp to age forged documents. In America, I sorted letters. Because chemistry departments don't hire Negroes. Doesn't matter what you accomplished in the war." Lieutenant Charles Brooks' journalism applications, preserved in the Detroit Public Library Tuskegee Airmen collection, document 18 newspaper applications between June 1945 and March 1946, all rejected. His 1975 memoir included this passage, "I wrote German bureaucratic language so perfectly that Gestapo agents believed it. Detroit newspapers wouldn't hire me to write obituaries." Brooks worked 30 years at Ford Motor Company, assembly line. His final interview before his death in 2003 was with the Detroit Free Press. They asked about irony. Brooks's response, "The newspaper finally interviewed me. Took 58 years. Still wouldn't have hired me to work here." The 1947 group photograph displayed at the National Museum of African American History and Culture shows all 12 men at a Tuskegee Airmen reunion. The photo caption lists their occupations: janitor, postal worker, factory worker, porter, cook, warehouse worker, delivery driver. Not a single profession requiring their demonstrated intelligence. In 1950, 5 years after escaping from Nazis who classified them as inferior, the 12 men attended a reunion in Washington, D.C. The Amsterdam News covered the event. Captain Johnson's quoted statement, "We proved to the Germans that their racial theories were wrong."
We're still proving it to America. The mathematics of post-war employment were as devastating as the escape statistics. Combined credentials of the 12 men, 12 college degrees, 147 combat missions flown, 1 sophisticated forgery operation executed, 1 successful escape from maximum security POW camp, 12 distinguished flying crosses awarded combined employment in fields matching their qualifications, 1945-1950. 0 actual employment, 3 janitors, 2 postal workers, 4 factory workers, 1 porter, 1 cook, 1 warehouse worker. Captain Johnson's 1965 speech at Howard University addressed the pattern. In Germany, we were classified as inferior and proved it wrong by escaping. In America, we were classified as inferior and proved it wrong by succeeding. The difference? Germany was defeated and had to change.
America won and didn't. At the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., there's a display about the Invisible Detachment. The forged documents are there, under glass, the transfer papers that fooled the Gestapo, the Luftwaffe identification cards, the ration coupons. Next to them, a photograph of the 12 men, taken in 1985 at a Tuskegee Airmen reunion, old men then, survivors. The display caption reads, "Sometimes the thing your enemy believes about you becomes your greatest advantage. Sometimes their ideology blinds them so completely that they cannot see the truth even when it walks past them."
Sometimes 12 men prove that intelligence has no colour by forging documents so perfect that the Gestapo never questioned them. Below that, a quote from Captain Robert Johnson, interviewed in 1978. "The Germans thought we were too stupid to fool them, so we fooled them. Then we came home to America and had to prove the same thing all over again. The difference was the Germans learned their lesson when they lost the war. America just kept pretending." In 2010, the Department of Defense officially recognized the Invisible Detachment's escape. The citation, issued 65 years after the event, stated, "The most successful prisoner escape operation in European theatre, demonstrating exceptional intelligence, planning, and execution under extreme conditions, recognition delayed due to historical oversight." Captain Johnson, age 89, attended the ceremony. His response, recorded by the Associated Press, "They're recognizing us now, that's good. Took 65 years. Would have been better if Detroit schools had recognized us in 1945 when I needed a teaching job." In 2012, the Stalag Luft III Memorial in Żagań, Poland, formerly Sagen, Germany, added a commemorative plaque. The dedication ceremony included remarks from German historian Dr. Klaus Müller. The Gestapo believed these men were intellectually inferior. This belief was wrong. This camp held 10,000 Allied prisoners. Only these 12 achieved complete escape. They succeeded by understanding something we didn't. Ideology makes you blind. Our racial theories prevented us from seeing what was happening. By using our assumptions against us, they proved assumptions themselves are prisons. The plaque text,
written in English, Polish and German, includes a note added in 2015 at the request of the German Federal Archive. The Wehrmacht and Gestapo processed these men according to Directive 48C, which classified Negro prisoners as intellectually limited. The sophisticated forgery operation that enabled their escape demolished that classification. This memorial acknowledges Germany's ideological failure and honors those who survived despite it. In 2018, the Smithsonian conducted its final interview with Lieutenant Harold Washington, aged 97, the last surviving member of the Invisible Detachment. The interview, archived in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, captured Washington's reflection. People ask how we fooled the Gestapo. Simple answer: racism makes you stupid.
Makes you see what you expect instead of what's there. The Germans expected us to be inferior, so they saw inferior. Even when we were forging documents, even when we walked out the gate. Same thing happened in America. We came home, applied for jobs matching our qualifications. They expected us to be janitors and porters, so they saw janitors and porters, even when we had college degrees and combat records. Your expectations blind you. True, whether you're German or American, Germany learned that lesson in 1945. America took longer. Some places still haven't learned. Interviewer: do you think the escape was worth it? Washington: we proved something that needed proving. That intelligence doesn't have a color. That capability doesn't recognize race.
Whether anyone wanted to accept that proof, that's a different question. Interviewer: any regrets? Washington: just one. We spent so much time proving we were equal. Would have been nice if people had just believed us to start with. Lieutenant Washington died June 14, 2020, aged 99. His obituary in the Washington Post was 6 paragraphs. 5 paragraphs described his 35-year career at the US Post Office. 1 paragraph mentioned he was a Tuskegee Airman who escaped from a Nazi POW camp. The Detroit Free Press ran a longer obituary written by the newspaper that had rejected his job application in 1946. The final paragraph noted, "Washington applied to this newspaper in 1946. We rejected him. We were wrong. This obituary is 74 years too late to matter to him."
But it matters that we admit it. The Gestapo classified Negro prisoners as intellectually inferior. Directive 48C said they were susceptible to manipulation, unable to master abstract concepts, incapable of sophisticated deception. The directive was based on 7 years of Reich racial science, studies, data, expert analysis. All of it was wrong. 12 black pilots proved it was wrong by creating forged documents so perfect that experienced Gestapo agents couldn't detect them, by walking out of a maximum security camp in broad daylight, by exploiting Nazi assumptions so completely that the Nazis couldn't see the escape happening. Just intelligence, applied creatively.
Against an enemy whose ideology made them blind. The Reich believed Negro pilots couldn't master abstract concepts, so Negro pilots used abstract thinking to reverse engineer German bureaucracy, forge perfect documents, and execute the only completely successful mass escape in Stalag Luft III history. The Reich believed Negro prisoners were psychologically vulnerable. So Negro prisoners used psychological manipulation to make German guards see what they expected instead of what was real. The Reich believed racial science proved Negro intellectual inferiority. So Negro intelligence destroyed that science by doing exactly what the science said was impossible, not through propaganda, not through argument, through the simplest experiment possible, forging documents, fooling the Gestapo, walking out the gate,
and proving that ideology, no matter how scientific it claims to be, cannot survive contact with reality. Sometimes the thing your enemy believes about you becomes the weapon you use to defeat them. Sometimes 12 men classified as inferior prove they're brilliant by making their enemy's racism the foundation of their escape. Sometimes Nazi racial ideology collapses not because it's morally wrong, though it is, but because it's operationally stupid. And sometimes black pilots from Detroit and Washington and Chicago forge perfect German documents in a POW camp, walk past Gestapo security, escape to freedom, and prove a simple truth. Intelligence doesn't recognize ideology. Capability doesn't acknowledge prejudice. Brilliance refuses to cooperate with racism. The Germans believed Negro prisoners couldn't forge documents.
So 12 Negro prisoners forged documents so perfect, the Gestapo never questioned them. The Americans believed Negro veterans deserved limited opportunities, so 12 Negro veterans spent their lives proving they deserved better. Neither country wanted to admit the truth, but the forged papers in that museum display, perfect Gothic script, authentic stamps, bureaucratic precision that fooled the Gestapo, tell it anyway, one document at a time,